The air tasted like a memory, a final bittersweet mix of ozone and fresh rain. From the viewport of the orbital launch platform, Earth hung in the void, a marble of impossible blues and swirling whites. I had studied that sight 1,000 times in textbooks, but never truly felt it until now. My name is Dr. Aris Thorne, physicist, astronomer, and as of this moment, a relic. Below, the final sunrise painted the eastern hemisphere in shades of fiery orange and soft violet, a sight I knew I would never witness again in person. The reason I was leaving was not glory, not conquest, but silence. A silence I desperately needed to find. For years I had peered through telescopes, listening for a whisper in the cosmic static, searching for a sign of life, of purpose, of anything beyond our lonely planet. But the silence had grown unbearable. It wasn't emptiness anymore. It was a roar. My work on the Aether Engine, a propulsion system designed to fold space-time itself, gave me one chance, a singular opportunity to see if the universe was truly as empty as it seemed. I wasn't just leaving Earth. I was leaving humanity, stepping off the last known ledge into the great, unknown abyss. The ship was not what anyone would call a vessel. It was a spear of polished obsidian, a mile-long needle of carbon fiber and crystalline alloys. Its name, Solitude. From the outside, its surface was alive, a mosaic of hexagonal plates that shifted with silent, hypnotic grace, absorbing and scattering the fury of nearby stars. Inside, everything was stripped to essentials. My living space was a hemisphere, a single dome with a viewport that would expand until it swallowed the entire chamber. The controls felt symbiotic. I sat in a chair that molded perfectly to my body, biomonitors woven into the fabric. The Solitude did not need thrusters, no fuel tanks, no roaring engines. At its heart burned the Aether Engine, a contained singularity, folding the fabric of space ahead and allowing the ship to fall into the new geometry. It wasn't moving through the universe. It was bringing the universe to me. The first time it came online, I felt the faintest tremor under my boots, a low vibration, deep, melodic, like the sound of reality preparing to be rewritten. With a single spoken command, the viewport dissolved into a star field. I whispered, "Engage." The hum deepened, climbing into a higher, almost melodic frequency. The stars outside began to smear, not rushing past, but stretching, bending, warping like wet paint on glass. Then the true effect began. A ripple spread forward, as if the ship had dropped a stone into the calm pond of reality. Space folded, time stuttered. The stars didn't move away from me. They collapsed toward me, then curved around in a silent, glittering maelstrom. The sense of motion vanished. What remained was existence itself. I was an island in a sea of collapsing light, a witness to the universe being redrawn by my hand. The hum fell back to a low, steady thrum. Outside, the stars sharpened again, pinpricks of unfamiliar constellations. The sky I had known all my life was gone. Earth was gone. I had folded space, and in doing so, I had erased home from the sky. The weight of that realization settled on me like lead, the profound, absolute finality of it. I was alone, carried into the endless, silent dark. The journey after the first fold was serene and strange. The Solitude was moving faster than light, yet there was no sensation of speed, no rushing stars, no blur of galaxies, only a frozen tapestry. Outside, the viewport showed a vast quilt of nebulae and distant spirals locked in stillness. Inside, time stretched thin. Days passed in quiet monitoring of the Aether Engine. Nights dissolved into contemplation. The only evidence of my velocity was written in light itself. Starlight shifted, stretched into the deep crimson of the spectrum. White points turned ember red. Blue suns dulled into rust. The cosmos was bleeding around me, not angry, not violent, but exhausted. I felt like a phantom, a ghost of light slipping between cosmic threads. The hum of the engine was my heartbeat, my thoughts, my only company. And in those thoughts, Earth returned. Not the people, never the people, but sensations, the warmth of sunlight across skin, the salt of ocean air, the scent of wet soil after rain. Memories, fragile as glass, clung to me in the silence, and the silence clung back. I spent hours in the communications bay, a small alcove with consoles that hummed in idle patience. Outside, mounted on the Solitude's hull, the great dish antenna stretched like a silver bloom, hungry for voices. For 2 weeks, I clung to hope. Hope that some fragment of Earth would follow me across the abyss, that a stray signal, an old satellite ping, a simple farewell might drift into reach. But the channels were empty, the static endless. No voices, no whispers, just the hum of the void. I replayed my last transmission over and over, a brief report, a simple goodbye. I knew no answer would come, yet I waited, because hope is stubborn. But in the quiet, reality grew heavier. This was not merely distance, this was exile. I was one human mind, severed from the species that birthed me. A single thought adrift in an endless sea of silence. The silence wasn't hostile. It wasn't cruel. It was indifferent. And indifference is colder than hate. The routine shattered with a single chime. A tone sharp enough to cut through silence. The ship's AI, Mnemosyne, spoke in its calm monotone. Anomaly detected, gravitational distortion, approaching system, Orionis. My pulse surged. I had logged Orionis as a distant waypoint, a dream for a later phase of the mission. Yet here I was. The fold had carried me with terrifying precision. I slowed the Aether Engine to standby. The stars outside hardened into distinct points once more. To port, a nebula bloomed in violet clouds. Beyond it, a dense cluster glittered like crushed diamond dust. The primary star glowed yellow, a young G-type sun, eerily familiar to our own. 6 planets circled in steady rhythm, with an asteroid field shimmering at the system's edge. But the anomaly wasn't in the star. It wasn't in the planets. Mnemosyne confirmed. Source located. 6th planet. Outer habitable zone. Coordinates locked. I leaned closer to the viewport. The 6th world was no larger than Mars, yet it twisted space around itself like a clenched fist. I whispered, almost afraid to hear my own voice. Not natural. As the Solitude descended, the 6th planet grew from a speck into a scarred, mottled sphere. Its deserts were jagged canyons, its highlands weathered plateaus. But what caught my breath were the veins. Incandescent blue rivers cut across the crust, glowing channels that pulsed faintly like arteries carrying light instead of blood. From orbit, they formed a vast lattice, as if the planet itself was alive. My instruments went wild. Gravitational fields spiked in erratic surges, rhythmic, almost intentional. Mnemosyne spoke. Field consistent with non-terrestrial geometrical formations. Artificial. That single word rang in my skull. I adjusted the orbit, heart hammering. Beneath me lay not random geology, but design. Something or someone had etched this network into the planet. The emptiness I had carried for so long cracked, replaced by adrenaline, by anticipation. I wasn't drifting through a dead universe anymore. I had found a signal, a trace, a possibility, and I could not look away. The Solitude hovered over the anomaly's coordinates. Below me stretched a city, or rather, its corpse. Vast monoliths jutted from the ground, their symmetry too precise for nature. Domes and towers sprawled across the landscape, carved from the same reddish-brown stone as the planet itself. And through every street, every wall, the blue veins ran, glowing channels, still pulsing faintly after untold ages. But there was no movement, no lights, no sound, only ruins. It was a metropolis turned mausoleum. Wind had eroded edges, sand had worn surfaces, yet the architecture still stood with impossible precision, as though the builders had sculpted the bones of reality itself. The silence pressed against me harder than vacuum. I realized I was staring at the proof I had chased my entire life. I was not alone in the universe. I was just late. I guided the ship toward the city's heart, landing struts extending with a quiet hiss. The dust swirled as Solitude touched down. Deep, steady documentary voice. Calm but serious tone. Clear enunciation. No exaggeration. Smooth pacing. Avoid overdramatic pauses. The ramp lowered with a hiss, spilling recycled air into the alien breeze. My suit confirmed the atmosphere. Thin, but breathable. Cold, metallic on the lungs. The ground crunched beneath my boots. Red dust clung to the soles, staining each step. Above, the sky was a pale rose, and 2 crescent moons hung like silver blades. For a moment, I froze at the threshold. This was history, the first human step on this world. I inhaled deeply. The air was sharp, coppery, alive with ions. My visor display flickered faintly from interference, then steadied. Around me, the ruins loomed, enormous, silent, patient. The blue veins that had blazed from orbit now glowed softly beneath my feet, their light threading upward through walls and arches like veins in stone flesh. The silence here was different, not absence, but expectation, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. I whispered, though no one was listening. I'm not an explorer anymore. I'm an intruder. The first structure rose before me, a pyramid with 3 flawless sides, its peak lost in the haze. Each face gleamed smooth, seamless, as if carved from a single titanic stone. I ran my gloved hand across the surface. No tool marks, no seams. It was matter, rewritten. Strange patterns spiraled across the walls, not carvings, not symbols, but alterations at the molecular level, geometry etched into the fabric of stone itself. They depicted nothing familiar, no animals, no constellations, only curves and angles that twisted the eye, shapes that hinted at dimensions just out of reach. This was not art, this was physics frozen in architecture. The realization hit me like gravity itself. These builders didn't simply construct, they sculpted reality. Humility burned through me, sharp and cold. I wasn't standing in ruins of a primitive culture. I was standing in the shadow of a god. My compass drew me to the city's center, a vast circular plaza where the glowing veins converged. At its heart stood something different, a perfect sphere, half buried in the ground, seamless, dark as obsidian. Its surface drank the light around it. No seams, no doors, no markings, only silence. Menosthenes' report scrolled across my visor. Energy signature, extreme. Gravitational fluctuations nearing instability. Evacuation recommended. I ignored it. This was the pulse I had been chasing across the void. My hand pressed to the surface, cold, smooth, yet alive, vibrating with a quiet electric hum that crawled into my bones. A static charge prickled through my gloves. I whispered to myself, "This isn't an object, it's an invitation." And in that instant, I knew. Leaving was no longer an option. This was the threshold, and thresholds are meant to be crossed. The sphere trembled under my touch. Around me, the city awoke. The etched walls flared with blue light. The veins across the plaza brightened, pulsing in rhythm, like the heartbeat of a buried giant. The hum deepened into a resonance I could feel in my chest. Before me, a section of the sphere shimmered, not opening, dissolving, a 2-meter arc fading into a black void darker than space itself. My lungs froze. This was the point of no return. I stepped through. Inside, silence pressed against me like water. The air was still, thick, saturated with invisible weight. In the center of the dome floated a shard of crystal, deep blue, suspended in nothing, glowing with a slow, hypnotic rhythm. I stared, and then I felt it. Not a voice, not words, but a current of thought, a silent flood of meaning pouring directly into my mind. The shard was speaking. Images struck me like lightning, not seen with eyes, but burned into thought. A people of light, their bodies translucent, shifting, fluid like glass under fire. Their mind not separate, but one, a collective. Their cities pulsed and breathed, structures woven from energy itself. They had not been born on this planet. They had come here, fleeing the death of their star. I felt their desperation, the endless voyage, the hope of beginning again. And then, the failure. A sickness, not a plague of microbes, but of resonance, a frequency their crystalline bodies could not withstand. It tore them apart, note by note, until their unity fractured into silence. Arborea had become their tomb. The crystal shard was not treasure, it was memory, their last breath, their final plea. The visions dimmed, leaving me trembling in the hollow dome. But the shard was not finished. The pulse shifted, not history now, but instruction. A schematic of light unfolded in my mind. A device, elegant, impossible. Lines of geometry bending reality itself. At first, I thought it was a cure, a shield to protect them from the resonance that had destroyed their race. But the images carried weight, warning, ambiguity. The gravitational fields I had detected were not weapons of war, nor monuments. They were harmonic barriers, shields, born of desperation. In their final days, they had almost succeeded. Almost. And then the shard whispered a last vision. A hand of light passing a torch into darkness. Not salvation, not survival, but inheritance. The shard pulsed one final time. A fragment of itself, a mote of blue fire, drifted free. It floated toward me, impossibly slow, until it slipped through my visor as if matter were irrelevant. Cool light brushed my skin. For a moment I felt chosen. The shard dimmed, its duty complete. Yet the data stream carved itself into me, each line etched like scripture. The schematic, the device. But as I traced its design, the truth snapped into focus. This was no shield. It was a countermeasure, a weapon. And then came the last whisper, not words, but pure meaning, burning into my thoughts. We did not come from the stars, we came from the void between them. The resonance we feared is not death, it is the song of the universe, and it is growing louder. And so, this is where the first part of the journey ends. But the road through the void has only just begun. I've seen a city of silence, I've touched the memory of a dying race, and I've carried their final whisper inside me. What waits beyond this planet, I cannot yet say, but I know the resonance is real, and it is growing louder. Next time, I'll follow its echoes farther, deeper into the dark between the stars. When the path ends, I'll tell you where it leads. Until then, keep your eyes on the horizon, and I'll see you when the road is finished.